I figured out what the key was, and it is not what you would expect whatsoever. Of all the things it could have been, guess what it was? I'm definitely going to need some coffee before I get into this one. It's a little bit emotional. YouTube helped me exit my depression. And what I mean by that is it kind of was the final push. I was on a rocky, path trying to get out of that depression, and YouTube definitely was the kicker that sent me down the final swoop. But I'll get into that a little bit more later. Quick backstory. I was depressed for a really long time. Talked a little bit about it briefly in some of my past videos. I know it really got triggered postpartum, and I just was never able to shake it off. Never was able to escape it. Definitely a very dark place of just trying to survive and take care of the family. But the funny thing about depression is there's a ton of advice of how to get out of depression, right? And all of it's really good advice and all of it works. The problem is when you're depressed, you can't access that information and put it to use to get yourself out. A really good example is, for me, when I was in my depression, I felt like I was in a rickety rowboat afloat in the ocean, nothing around me, no land, no other boats, no other people, just alone in a massive sea. And I am slowly dying of thirst and hunger. And all around me in this boat, I am surrounded by water. Water that potentially could keep me alive, but I can't drink it, right? It's seawater, it's salt water. So in this analogy, the seawater is all of the helpful advice that people have of getting out of depression, right? You're surrounded by all of this good advice, you're surrounded by all of this water, but you can't actually consume it to survive. There's something missing, the key that can switch it from ocean water to drinkable water, the good advice to usable advice. Not knowing what that key was, or that there was a key missing, I just kept on floating and floating and floating and floating. I figured out what the key was. I figured out what was needed to translate my depression and unlock all of that advice that is out there to help everybody get out of depression. And it is not what you would expect whatsoever. Quick little side note, I am not a medical professional. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not any of those, professions with illegible handwriting. I can't do that. Go talk to your professional. This is my story. This is my advice, in hopes that I might reach one other person out there and give them the strength to pull themselves out of that dark place, because that's not a place anybody wants to really live in. When somebody says, hey, go get some exercise, you'll feel better. Somebody says, eat some healthy food and, work on your diet, you'll feel better. Here's some medicine, you'll feel better. So the key that would unlock that great advice, that key that would turn that salt water into drinkable water. So in the analogy, the key would be maybe a distiller, right? Like a distiller, you take the undrinkable water, you boil it, the steam that evaporates is pure, all the impurities are left behind, and then it condenses back into water form, and then you drink it. So the key was the distiller. So I needed to find a key that would unlock that great advice. And of all the things it could have been, guess what it was? Anger. Anger was my magical secret key to unlock the path to get out of depression. Obviously, we don't want to stay in anger. Angry people are definitely very intense, and you don't want to go around your whole life being angry any more than you want to go around your whole life being depressed. But let's think about the really key pieces. A depressed person, how do they look? They are low energy. They are not motivated. They can't get out of bed. They are quiet. They're just stagnant. Now flip it over to an angry person. What does an angry person look like? Because they're usually so intense that people will step back. There's just so much going on. And that person is loud. That person has their thoughts being broadcast, right? They're not, holding it in. They have energy. They're probably like pacing and throwing their arms around. They're agitated. They're rallying around them. They're rallying in the people around them to hear what they have to say and get them on board. And they're noticed. Like you cannot miss an angry person. And so you're looking at night and day between a depressed person and an angry person. A lot of people would say, well, if you could just switch to anger so easily, why not just switch over to happiness? Anybody that's been angry generally knows that anger is not always chosen. A lot of times you are just triggered into it. It's just like that split hair effect. Whereas happiness or joyfulness takes a little bit more work, right? So say you are leaving home, hugging, kissed your family, you're feeling good and loved, you go outside and somebody honks their horn, flips you off. You instantly are in a bad mood, right? You might feel some anger. All of that good love and joyfulness got erased and switched over to anger. That anger lasts longer. That anger is stronger than happiness, because what happens if somebody honked their horn, flipped you off as you're going into your house, right? You're instantly angry. And then your family's there to greet you with lots of love. You're just not even interested in the love. You're angry. That anger is bigger than a happy or joyful feeling. And we can get to it so quickly. It's like just a split second. Somebody spilt their coffee on your shirt. You might have been laughing a second ago, but you are really ticked off right now because your outfit is ruined. Your skin's probably burning and, anger. When we have a depressed state and we're barely feeling any emotions, annoyance comes through, frustration can still come through, but even anger is hard. So it's kind of like looking for it. You have to kind of welcome it a little bit, as opposed to I don't care, whatever. What's the difference, right? You have to have a moment that will trigger it. Here's my trigger story. About 6 months after the divorce, I'm still depressed, because it's not like it's magic, the moment I sign my name on a divorce paper, like, oh, no. My depression was built up by a lot of things, not just one thing, but a lot of things, and I had to heal and go through it. So 6 months after the divorce, I am still down in the pits and trying to find my way out. Co-parenting, because we have a child together, co-parenting can be very stressful and difficult. Those first 6 months, I just let myself get rolled over, whatever. This happened, fine. That happened, fine. That didn't happen, fine. And I just went with it in any situation. Well, this particular case, it was summer. I just signed up our youngest for some summer camps. I was already feeling a little bit frustrated because I didn't get any help. I don't have a lot of money, and I was hoping I'd get support and help on that because it was, benefiting our kiddo. The camp was 45 minutes away. So it was a 3-hour camp, 3 days a week, 45 minutes away. 3 hours was a little too long to just hang out, but 45 minutes was too far to drive home and come back. So I had asked my ex, I said, will you do the pickups if I do the drop-offs as I'm going to camp? Because I hadn't gotten an answer back in the weeks that were leading up to this. I kind of pushed. I said, I need an answer. Will you pick up? And the reply was basically, I was so focused on planning all of these things that if that was my choice, I could also be the executor. So you planned it, you execute it. You set it up, you pick her up. And there was no help. And this particular time, I felt the anger. I had had too many in a row, and I think there was just too much overwhelming me from the finances and the drive and some meltdowns during the day. And I felt that anger kind of build up. Dropped off my kiddo at camp, drove home, and I had 45 minutes to stew in this anger. And I just figured, you know what? I'm going to let it out. Obviously, through all this depression, you're learning about all of these things you're supposed to do, but there's just not really the execution or the practice of it. And I'm like, I'm just going to, it's a whole car ride home, ranting and yelling and creating these scenarios of how I'd stick it to him and I'd show him and just working myself up. And just that it just kept building up and it was just being released. It was like the floodgates, we're letting it all out. And I mean, I'm screaming, I got tears running down my face, I'm blowing my nose. And as my ride is, wrapping up and I'm getting closer to home, a song comes on the radio. It's been playing on in the background. And it was the song that I called my divorce anthem. So a little cheesy. It was one of the songs that was kind of women empowerment and, you can do it. And so I just started to sing, and so I've still got red, snotty nose, still got the tears, still got the angry voice, and I'm trying to sing and I'm missing words and I'm completely off key and I'm just belting it out, just going for it. And I get home after that song had ended and another one had played. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep this going, and I'm going to get some music on it, like blast it up as loud as I can. I just start singing, just going along. And then I started moving around and yeah, I'm going to do the whole dance like nobody's watching. What's it going to hurt? I've never done that before. And I haven't been dancing since I was 22. Like I'm very rusty. My skill set is, pretty minor but I just started moving. I don't know what I was doing, some sort of contemporary interpretation dance or I don't know. I would have been mortified if anybody was recording it or if anybody had been watching me jumping up on the coffee table and launching myself onto the couch and doing dramatic flips off the side. And when I say flips, I just mean like my legs were kicking. I went through like 5 or 6 songs just going to town with that base feeling of anger and frustration. And so finally, there was a break in the music and I went and got a drink of water and I checked the time and I didn't feel so angry, but I also didn't feel sad. I just kind of was there. It doesn't seem very thrilling, a little anticlimactic to just feel I was content existing, but it actually felt good compared to what I'd been feeling for so long. That was all because I let myself get angry. So I got angry and it made me not feel so depressed. How does that lead to YouTube helping me out of my depression if it was actually anger? Well, anger was just basically the first step that woke me up, right? It started to form the key that I needed to kind of unlock all the advice that's just been sitting there waiting for me. Like the amount of self-help YouTube videos that I've watched, books that I've read, podcasts that I've listened to are all floating around just waiting for me to be able to latch onto it and make something out of it. The advice was good. I just hadn't been able to get myself there. And the problem is your body can do the actions. Like that's how we go through our day of getting the kids ready for school, making our meals, cleaning up, doing laundry. Our body can do the functions, right? But the brain is not there. It's really hard to explain unless you've been there. But if you've been there, you kind of know what I mean. You're a little bit on a robot zombie mode. Once the brain was actually awake and ready to do, some of these advice, then the steps that were previously more just zombie mode became tangible things. You watch a documentary about Paris and you learn all about Paris and you see all of the sites, firsthand, great angles, and it's just really, in depth. But then you actually go to Paris and you see it. And the documentary probably had way better images and way better angles and a lot more insider, places to get into than you could as a tourist. But when you are actually there, it's different. It's really different. Right? You hear the song on the radio versus going into the concert. There's a difference of the motion. And so suddenly I'm aware of little details and paying attention. And so I start to try to activate some of this good advice and I start going for a walk. So I had done a video where I tried to walk for 30 days. And because once I woke up a little bit, I started to kind of care about how much I'd been letting myself go, how much I hadn't been showering and clothing myself well and eating well and exercising and gaining weight. And so I wanted to try to start actually doing something about it. Baby steps. I started going for a walk, and I did it in the evenings, and I got myself to do it for about a month, so about 30 days. At the time, I was too focused on big changes. I wasn't paying attention to the differences that each little one was making. So I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I just walked for 30 days after a whole year or two of barely going on any walks and moving around, and I didn't lose a single pound. So walking is dumb. I'm not going to walk. I don't like walking. Well, I actually was slowly coming out of my depression with those walks. It was giving my brain time to wander and to think about my day and think about how I was feeling, make new plans and make new ideas of what I wanted to do next. And when I'm at home distracted or reading or watching TV, I'm not giving my brain that time to wander. So it was incredibly therapeutic and healing to just go on those walks every single day. And I slacked off at first, not realizing the impact it was making. And it took me about another month and a half or so before it kind of clicked. Wait a minute, there was something that was good coming from that. And so I began saying, well, what else can I do? And I started looking at my food and trying to think, well, maybe I need to watch my calories. And if I pair the calories with walking and these things, it'll, give me some improvement. And I still kept on focusing on the wrong thing. I was just so brand new to executing all of these ideas that I'd been thinking about that I was just going at too much, too big. And I wasn't keeping track of my the inner me needed time to repair before it could take on the external me and worrying about that. And when I realized this, I got a piece of paper out and I just started writing out ideas, because my ideas have been just coming and coming and coming. And one of the cool things I realized is when you move away from depression and your sadness or your bitterness or your negative or whatever that low vibe energy that you're holding on to, any move that you make is positive. So it doesn't mean you got to make, 10 steps up and you're suddenly happy and energetic and, living life to the fullest and you're doing all of these bucket list things. Sometimes it's just a diagonal step. I mean, it's not a forward or backwards path. I mean, it's a 360 view of the world. So I can step over there and I've made progress. I can step over there and I've made progress. I can step over there and I'm not going backwards. I'm literally just making progress in a different direction than just standing in my spot, not moving anywhere. So it doesn't need to be the sprint. It doesn't need to be the marathon. Writing down all of these ideas was so exciting to me because I hadn't been getting ideas in a very long time. And I used to always be very curious. I had a very curious mind. And whenever I couldn't figure something out or I would get frustrated or angry about something, it would trigger my curiosity, my problem solving skills. And I would just want to figure out why is it that way and what can I do about it? And how does this benefit me or somebody else? And it just felt so good to be curious. Curiosity, that to me was a huge sign of living again. Laughing at a joke or something silly that my kids did, those are great. Having curiosity, it just kept me going. The downside, I guess, of it would be I had been in my routine for so long of not doing anything that even though my brain said, okay, I'm awake, I'm ready, what are we going to do now? My body was still stuck in, this is what we do. We don't do that. We do this. I don't want to go over there. I do this. And so every time the idea would pop up, my body had kind of a hard time really embracing that. So I took the list and I kind of formatted it a little bit with some highlights of what I could do. Like some of the things were losing weight and journaling and working on gratitude and spending time with my kids. And then there were some things on there that said, look for 10 things that bring you a smile. look for 10 things each day that made you curious. It was kind of a little bit all over the place. And I figured, what better way to get myself motivated to do these steps than to create a YouTube video or create a YouTube channel. I had no assumptions whatsoever about becoming famous or getting a huge amount of, followers or views or monetizing or anything like that. I'm not going to turn it down. Subscribe. Hit that bell. Wow, that was really cheesy. It gave me a way to be accountable. So I'm in a place where I don't have any family around. It's just me and my girls and my ex in this town. So I've got no family because of all of the depression. I haven't had friends in a really long time. I had nobody to keep me accountable. It's really easy to tell yourself something, lie to yourself about something, convince yourself about something, unconvince yourself about something without there being any steps to kind of pressure you into sticking with what you said. And that's what I decided to do for YouTube. I decided I needed a fresh start and one I could just focus on my day, bringing myself the joy that I could find in that day. I started taking my list and I started creating these videos based upon things that I wanted to improve about myself or work on for myself or, follow the curiosity for myself. You might have noticed if you've looked at any of my other videos, it's very chaotic. It's kind of all over the place with different topics, some talking about what I've gone through, some talking about what some of my new plans are, some are just there that don't really have a place. But the great part of it that is so exciting to me is that I feel purpose, and I haven't felt purpose in such a long time. And it's so silly to a lot of people to say you're creating videos, creating content for ghosts. There's nobody watching. Nobody actually cares what you're going through. And I know this and I accept this and I'm okay with that. I still feel excited when I put my video together. I'm talking out my thought. Nobody's telling me that I'm talking too much, and nobody's telling me that I'm being bossy, and nobody's telling me I'm nagging, and nobody's telling me that, I'm getting confusing, and nobody's telling me that we don't have time for that. And I get to just explore what my brain says, this is what I want to explore. And then I get to put it together and I get to see the joy of something that I made and the curiosity that led me to it. And it's out there in the world for myself to watch. So thank you to anybody that is watching this, because this person right here may not seem like a big deal, like she's got a lot going on, because I don't have a lot going on at all, but I am not the person I was 6 months ago, a year ago. I'm finally feeling like the person that I set out to be when I was a teenager, turning 18, launching myself out into the world with so much excitement and passion of where my paths were going to go. And it's been almost 20 years. I forgot what that was until I felt it again. Anger, not always a bad thing. Definitely lean into your anger because it's a step, right? You're taking a step. Doesn't matter what direction it is. Anger is a step away from where you're at. If you don't want to be where you are, anger is a pivot point. Don't let yourself wallow in the anger. Don't let yourself stew and dwell in that anger. And that's something else I've been working on, is training my brain to be able to pivot my thoughts. So if my thoughts are going down a path that's bringing me a lot of anxiety and I can feel my heart rate kicking up, I pivot. I make myself think about something else. It can be something as inane and ridiculous as the My Little Pony movie that the kids play on repeat almost every single day. And I have all the words memorized. I will just pick a scene out of that movie and I will just quote it until I get distracted by something else. And it's just enough time to pivot away from that anxiety that I was feeling and letting it go. That's a side little note. Pivot. Whatever you're in, if it's a path that's not feeling good, give yourself a distraction pivot and see where it lands you. Well, thank you for going with me on this journey. And I know I kind of went off a little bit. I have a bad habit of rambling and going on tangents, and I'm trying really hard to work on that. You may not be able to tell, but I actually have gotten better with each video. And I hope that my story found somebody that really needed to hear that information and gave them a little bit of hope, because the next best thing to curiosity sometimes is hope. Hope that there is something better, hope that there's another chance, hope that tomorrow will bring you exactly what you need. It's in you. It really is. And if you're somebody that's watching this and you've been where I've been and you would like to share maybe a little piece of information about how you got out of your dark place, maybe that advice will help somebody else. I really hope you'll leave it in the comments below and just kind of keep the good going. The world can be whatever we decide it's going to be. And I hope that I can put good out and keep focused on the good. I hope all the best for you. Stay curious.